Oh, we're halfway there. Oh, we're listing scary wrestlers. What is up, everyone? Welcome back. Brand from Pro Wrestling Planet here, and you've caught us right smack dab in the middle of the 100 scariest wrestlers of all time. It's been pretty fun so far. If you're just joining us, here's a recap of how the countdown has shaken out so far. Those were all pretty dang scary, but there's a lot more to come. There's two things you can do to make sure that you don't miss who's at number one, and that's subscribing and hitting that bell, brother. Speaking of hitting bells, ding, 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 let's get this started. Number 50, Alexa Bliss. She was born Alexis Kaufman in 1991, and Alexa is a straight WWE product herself. She was signed to the WWE Performance Center with no prior training or wrestling experience whatsoever. This happened in 2013, and a short 3 years later, she was the SmackDown Women's Champion. I think everyone's pretty familiar with her, so this entry is mainly focused around one section of her gimmick, and this of course has to do with her time spent as one of the characters involved in Bray Wyatt's Firefly Funhouse along with The Fiend. Alexa basically performed the gimmick of some sort of lost demonic child, and it made for a lot of creepy segments. Some people are a fan of it, some not so much. I thought they were interesting, at least. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Number 49, Alistair / Malakai Black. He was born Tom Budgeon in 1985, and he's actually Dutch. I don't think we should hold that against him, but started his career on the European scene as Tommy End in 2002. By the 2010s, he was a pretty high-profile independent star who had made several stops over here in America, and by 2016 he was signed to WWE and NXT, and after a good 5 years there of trying his damnedest, he ended up leaving for All Elite Wrestling, hence the change from Alistair Black to Malakai Black. At the end of the day, what makes him scary is his semi-Satanist gimmick. No one really knows what any of it means, but it sure is scary. Number 48, Crowbar. Crowbar was born Christopher Ford in 1974. He trained under Iron Mike Sharp and began wrestling in 1992. Busted his tail in that 90s indie scene for about 5 years. He spent all this time under the name Devon Storm, and by 1997 he finally landed a deal with the World Wrestling Federation, although they didn't really do much for him at the time. He was thought to be a part of their light heavyweight division, but ended up like more of an afterthought. He found himself in WCW in 1999 here as Crowbar, an out-of-control maniac that people were pretty sure escaped from a mental asylum somewhere. Him and David Flair and Daphne were a trio of schizophrenics who got along with each other, basically. When WCW closed down in 2001, he didn't exactly end up working for WWE, so he's been on and off the indie scene ever since then. You carry a crowbar, your name's Crowbar, you talk to yourself, you're going to end up in the list. It's just really that easy. Number 47, Necro Butcher. Born Dylan Summers in 1973, Necro got his career started in 1998. He had a bunch of different names, including Michael Van Slick and Private D Summers. Before the Necro Butcher thing and the hardcore thing, deathmatch thing started taking off. So this guy has had quite a run throughout the 2000s as the deathmatch wrestler, but he wouldn't only do death matches, he would do some actual wrestling from here and there as well. But of course, that's what made him the scariest, is his willing to just get in there and get bloodied. The most famous example of this is you can see him in the 2008 movie The Wrestler, doing exactly what he was famous for, stapling guys' heads and the whole bit. He first retired in 2016, but has since came out of retirement several times. And from what I've gathered here, it looks like in 2020 he was diagnosed with lymphoma, but has since recovered from that. Says he's even been in the ring as recently as 2022. So Necro Butcher still going strong at age 50. Number 46, the Wyatt Family. All right, hold on. Before y'all accost me here with this, let me make one thing clear. This induction is for the family itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to lump in the 3 other guys that were a part of the family. That means Luke Harper, aka Brody Lee, Eric Rowan, and yes, even Braun Strowman get credit for being a part of the extended Wyatt family. Bray Wyatt, the leader of the outfit, well, we'll get to him later. We definitely had to rank him higher. These other 3 guys, though, definitely played their parts very well. I mean, who didn't have a nightmare over that sheep's mask? So then sometimes you'd see a scary black sheep mask. I think I've pled my case well enough. Number 45, the Great Khali. Born Dalip Singh Rana in 1972. Earliest known instance of him wrestling is in the year 2000 with All Pro Wrestling as Giant Singh. And fun fact, something that I just learned today as well, fans. His first American contract was actually, strangely enough, with World Championship Wrestling. This happened a little short of a year from the company being bought out under Vince McMahon. For whatever reason, they passed on him at that point, and he ended up doing some stuff in Japan for a while. Then he did some stuff in Mexico, and then in 2005, and then right at the beginning of 2006, WWE said, finally, okay, we'll go ahead and sign you to a contract. After about 5 months, they decided that they had seen enough, and he was brought up to the main roster, and of course, booked like an unstoppable monster from day one. I mean, why wouldn't you? Just take a look at this guy. He really held it down as the main monster heel in WWE for a good 2 to 3 years. Eventually, they got tired of it, turned him into a comedy character like they do a lot. Now he runs his own wrestling promotion and school in India, and he's still semi-active to this day, apparently. So still scaring people. Gotcha. Number 44, the Kiss Demon. This is a weird one. Born Dale Torborg in 1971. He was initially a baseball player before injuries derailed that. In 1995, he started training to be a wrestler. After that, he ended up in the WCW power plant. And just to make a long story short, basically, Kiss had a deal with WCW to possibly have a whole stable of Kiss wrestlers on board. They originally wanted this character to be portrayed by Bryan Adams, but it ended up being portrayed by Dale Torborg here instead. It also centered around a big concert that Kiss was going to have on Nitro. The concert bombed, people were confused by the wrestler, and eventually just kind of fizzled out. He just became the Demon. As a scary wrestler, I mean, come on, it has all the ingredients. You have the spitting blood, you have the Demon name, you have the face paint. You're pretty much ready to go from there. Torborg eventually retired in 2021. Number 43, the Great Kabuki. I really wanted to rank this guy higher. Familiarity purposes, though, kind of bumped him down in this range. Was born in 1948 and debuted in wrestling in 1964. He also went under a few different names, but we'll just kind of group this all together as one induction here. This guy may have been the first guy to ever blow the mist in someone's face, which now just seems like a time-honored tradition and birthright, really. A lot of fans will remember him from World Class or Jim Crockett Promotions, perhaps. He did have one sporadic appearance with the WWF with the 1994 Royal Rumble entrance, and like most wrestlers, they may slow it down over time, but it's really hard for them to actually stop. He was wrestling all the way at age 70 in the year 2018. Wrestling, it might be the fountain of youth. Number 42, Big Van Vader. Born to Leon White in 1955. This guy was drafted by the Rams in 1978, but injury problems cut his football aspirations short, so he began wrestling training Wrestling and debuted in 1985. He spent his first couple years learning in the American Wrestling Association. From there, he sojourned to Europe for a few years, ended up in Japan in around 1987, and by proxy off of that, most fans probably saw him appear in World Championship Wrestling with everyone else around the year 1990. Probably one of the biggest, scariest bad guys that WCW had at the time. He'd come to the ring wearing that huge helmet that was real freaky, and then he'd set it down in the aisle and it would blow smoke. You remember that? By 1995, he and WCW had parted ways. After doing a couple other things here and there, he was finally ready to come to the World Wrestling Federation, and he was in the WWE for a good 3 years, which I'm telling you seemed like a decade if you lived through it. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. It just kind of never got off the ground in WWE though, for whatever reason. We would hear a lot of rumors that Vince McMahon just thought he was too fat. I don't know. From there, just like most wrestlers, career slowed down but didn't quite actually stop. Who knows how long he would have went if he could. He wrestled his last match at the age of 62, but died a year later in 2018 at the age of 63. Number 41, Ming. Tonga Fafita was born in 1959. Actually first started out as a sumo wrestler, but then transitioned that into pro wrestling and started doing that around 1978. He was first King Tonga, and then WWF audiences in the 80s came to know him as Haku. Did all kinds of stuff for years, but was always just kind of like a guy. He lands in WCW in 1994, where they rebrand him as Ming, and this guy was legitimately scary. Dungeon of Doom, no Dungeon of Doom, Faces of Fear or no Faces of Fear. I mean, this guy would legitimately destroy guys. You ask anyone from those locker rooms back in those days, and they would say that probably the most legitimate tough guy in there was Ming. Anyway, I've made my case. Legit tough guy, legit scary, belongs on the list. Yes, that's a wrap for this one. I cannot believe that we only have 40 more names left to go through on this list. We're really getting down to the nitty-gritty, folks. Only the best, most scariest wrestlers remain. Who will be number one? There's only one way to find out. It's one thing, but it requires 2 steps: subscribing and hitting the bell notifications. Please join us because the end is near. Please make sure to leave a like on your way out, and we'll see you next time right here on Pro Wrestling Planet.
Arriba! This is WWE legend, Hall of Famer Tito Santana, and you are watching Pro Wrestling Planet. Does not get any better than this. Arriba!